Hello, brothers and sisters. Welcome to our show. This is the show that gives you no propaganda, just the news behind the news. We do analysis, we give you the information that you want to know. For the show of today, we have a question. Why is it that countries like the United States of America, Britain, are prospering very much, but African countries that have a lot of natural resources are trapped in poverty? Why is it so? For the show of today, we'll have to give you an answer, because this is what this show is about. This show is designed to explain Africa in a geopolitical environment. Africa does not exist alone. Africa exists in a global setting. So we look at geopolitics, the economy, and the social factors. We bring everything together to explain the news behind the news. This is what our channel is. No propaganda. We are the voice of the people. So if you like this kind of content, this is the show you should come to. Watch this show, subscribe, and view the show with your friends and family. So for the show of today, we're going to focus on production sovereignty. For so many years now, there's been a whole lot of coups d'etats in the Sahel region. When we talk about the Sahel region, we're talking about Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. That whole belt has become the coup belt. So most of these coups have been taking place in former French colonies. We've told you why this is happening. These colonies, former colonies of France, are rejecting France. Why? Most of them are touting a new concept that some of you have heard. It is called political sovereignty. Sovereignty means a situation in which we want to maintain dominion over our own political affairs. That's what political sovereignty means. We like this concept. We like the fact that these African countries are breaking away from their former colonial master, France, and they are trying to form a more perfect country, starting with political sovereignty. Okay? But political sovereignty is not enough, as we're going to show you in the video of today. In addition to political sovereignty, we need to have what we call production sovereignty. When we talk about production sovereignty, it means the yardstick we use to judge a country is the degree of production the country engages in. And when we look at the degree of production, we look at this production in political terms, social terms, and economic terms. That's how we measure the country. We're not going to measure an African country based on GDP, gross domestic product. No, we're not going to do that. That's a false economic concept. We're going to look at how far can this country produce enough goods for itself? How far can this country feed its citizens? If you cannot feed your citizens, then you fail. So that's why we're using production sovereignty. Production sovereignty looks at three foundations, three pillars. The first pillar is political, the second pillar is social, and the third pillar is economic. So these three pillars work in tandem to help us achieve our goals. So when you ask me, Prince Ojong, can you ask the question again? Yes. Why is it that many African countries are trapped in poverty? These African countries have a lot of natural resources, but they are wallowing in poverty. Whereas countries such as the United States of America, Britain, South Korea, China are prospering. Why? It is because I'm coming up with a universal theory of nation development. This universal theory of nation development involves a relook at what Charles Darwin on the origin of species published in the 1900s. Okay? It shows you the way he studied living organisms. By contrast, I'm studying nations, and I'm going to come up with a theory of nation. Because nations need to develop. If they have to develop, they have to evolve, they have to adapt, then they prosper. Then they have to go through three stages of development. They have to go through three revolutions: agrarian revolution, industrial revolution, and information revolution. This is what happened in Europe, and this is what happened in America. If a country can go through these three stages, then they are really ready to develop. So African countries have not been able to develop because they've not been able to follow these three processes. Okay? The agrarian revolution, the industrial revolution, and the information revolution. For most of these countries, you can see that they have a lot of raw materials. But that's the problem. They have a lot of raw materials, but they exchange these raw materials for something that is not useful to them. Foreigners take these raw materials and in exchange, they give them finished goods. These finished goods come in the form of imports. Then the imports are also costing Africa because the imports are not equivalent to the value that the foreign companies are assessing. The same applies to the debt. Because we are importing more than we export, we have an imbalance of trade. Okay? We have an imbalance of trade in the country. We cannot handle our balance of payments. So because of this, we are always in debt and we are having an economy that's not working. So when you see the countries in the Sahel pushing for political sovereignty, we salute it because they are already moving in the right direction. They are coming to where we want them to be. And when we look at Benin, Benin is the first country we're going to talk about on the show of today. Romo Wardani has just become the new president of Benin. Benin has been a French colony for a long time. They became free by obtaining what I call flag independence. Since they obtained their independence, what has happened? Not much. Benin has moved from one president to another. Because they only had flag independence, France look at Benin as their farm, their plantation. All the natural resources in Benin belong to France. Then how would you expect Benin to develop? Benin cannot develop because they are a French plantation. Now their new president, Romo Wardani, is taking a new path. After he became president a few weeks ago, he decided to change direction from Patrice Talon. So Romo Wardani started making an overture to most of the states of the Sahel states. When you look at Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. So first, Romo Wardani made a trip to Niger. Then he made a trip to Burkina Faso to show that he's breaking away from his predecessor, France Talon. Now he's looking for a form of rapprochement with the Sahel states. Okay? So he's already breaking away. So why is he breaking away? Because he has seen that he needs political sovereignty for his country. So political sovereignty is just the first step. It's like a child who goes to school, starts with infant 1 until they get to class 7. So we are encouraging these Sahel states. They are doing something. They are moving in the right direction by breaking away from an exploitative country such as France. Okay? We salute that. Okay? But we're going to make them move from political sovereignty to economic sovereignty and social sovereignty. Economic sovereignty means that we have to be able to produce what we consume. We don't want to be having trade deficits with other countries. We need to be having surpluses. We need to export more than we import. We need to control our economy. In order to do that, we have to make sure that instead of exporting our raw materials to Europe, we need to process these raw materials into finished goods in our own continent. We don't have to send our stuff to foreigners. They process it, then they send us finished goods, then they tell us, you're still owing us, even though we've taken all your natural resources. This is what is happening. How can Africa develop in such a circumstance? Next, we take you to Burkina Faso. In Burkina Faso, we have a young leader since September 2022, Ibrahim Traoré. He came to power by overthrowing Paul-Henri Damiba in a coup d'etat. We may not like coup d'etats, but we like the fact that Ibrahim Traoré is introducing a change. He wants his country to move to a new direction. A direction that was set by Thomas Sankara, but the colonial stooges of France killed Sankara. And you know who I'm talking about. Okay? Blaise Compaoré is a culprit, is the Satan. He killed Thomas Sankara in cold blood. Then the country now went back to the ground. All the self-reliant ideas that Sankara had put forth so that we can move the economy of Burkina Faso forward. Burkina Faso now hit the grind, was not moving forward anymore. But now, with the arrival of Ibrahim Traoré, he's talking about political sovereignty. Political sovereignty, which means we need to be sovereign. We need to be the masters of our own destiny politically. We need to decide what happens in our country in terms of politics. We need to start building our own institutions. So what Ibrahim Traoré has not done yet is he's focused so much of his attention on fighting a war against jihadists. So this is the excuse. We can afford to give him some time for a honeymoon, because jihadist activity is rife in the Sahel region. After the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi, a lot of weapons were awash in this Sahel region. So most of these bad elements are using these weapons to cause headache. France has been unable to contain the problem of jihadists in this region. After so much frustration, Ibrahim Traoré decided that, okay, enough is enough, we have to kick France out. As I'm talking to you today, Ibrahim Traoré has officially broken all diplomatic relations with France. Ibrahim Traoré has asked France to leave his country, and that's what is happening now. France has to leave Burkina Faso. So this is political sovereignty. But we like other ideas that are propounded by Ibrahim Traoré. He has a lot of initiatives in the economic sovereignty arena. Under economic sovereignty, we want to have our own production. We want to create goods and services. We want to use the factors of production to create our own goods and services. Only by doing this can we become self-reliant economically. And we have to take this further. We have to trade with other African countries so that we can control our wealth. Okay? Then, of course, Ibrahim Traoré is also trying to get help from the African diaspora. He's asking people from Africa to come to his country and invest. We think this is a salutary move. It's going to help his country economically, socially, and politically. Okay? So when we talk about sovereignty, Ibrahim Traoré is already taking the right steps. He's already encouraging local industries. Now he has sent French companies out of his country. So we're going to see that local companies are going to have the time to grow. They're going to be protected, and then they're going to be able to do stuff, produce what the people consume. Instead of importing a lot of stuff from France and Europe, we're going to start depending on products that are produced in Burkina Faso. So we think this is a salutary move. In addition, in the past, the French have been controlling all the gold mines and natural resources in Burkina Faso. Things are changing now. Now, Ibrahim Traoré has nationalized all of these industries, and the government controls them. Instead of the government working for the French, the government now is working for the people of Burkina Faso. We just hope some kind of peace can be made with the jihadists so that we can develop Burkina Faso in peace. If there's no peace, it's very, very difficult to develop a country. So, which is why we want peace. As much as soldiers like to fight, we think peace will put Burkina Faso in a better situation where they can develop a lot faster. So now we summarize Burkina Faso by telling you political sovereignty, economic sovereignty, and social sovereignty. Next, we take you now to Mali. In Mali, you have Assimi Goïta. A few weeks ago, the jihadists almost overran his country. They killed the Minister of Defense. But did they kill the soul of the country? No. Why did they do this? Because they were unhappy with the politics of Assimi Goïta. Assimi Goïta came to power by changing the trajectory of the country. Instead of depending on France, Assimi Goïta wants the people to have political sovereignty. This may sound like a big term. Political sovereignty simply means Mali must maintain dominion over Malian affairs. France does not have to dictate the politics of Mali. If France dictates the politics of Mali, then Mali would be a puppet of France, and Mali cannot control its destiny. But we are telling Assimi Goïta, take political sovereignty forward. Don't limit yourself to political sovereignty. focus on economic sovereignty and social sovereignty. Under social sovereignty, we're looking at like education, institutions. We have to build institutions that are good for our own country. The education has to serve the needs of Mali, not the needs of France. Colonial education is over. We need to focus on functional education that can make us citizens of the whole global economy. When you are trained in skills that are needed all over the globe, you are better off. Instead of reciting French poems which don't help the people of Mali, we want to focus on our roots, African roots. And this is what you see now in Mali. Assimi Goïta has already pushed these guys out. Then what about Niger? Niger is also on the same wavelength. They kick out Mohamed Bazoum, a puppet of France. Since then, France has been clamoring for his restoration. But General Traoré has refused because he's touting political sovereignty. Political sovereignty is good, but we are telling Mr. Traoré, General Traoré, we have to move forward. I like the collaboration of the Sahel states. That's positive. But you guys need to learn that there are three pillars. The political pillar is just one. Politics alone is not going to give food to your people. So we need to focus on economics and social sufficiency, self-reliance. Then what about Togo? Today, Togo is playing games. Togo is a former French colony. When we look at the politics of Gnassingbé, foreign Gnassingbé Eyadema, he is playing a lot of games. He's trying to, he's balancing, he's playing a whole balancing act. He's trying to please ECOWAS, he's trying to please France, then he's trying to please Russia. But now we're seeing that he's getting a lot of weapons from Russia. Russia uses weapons as a carrot. When Russia dangles a carrot in front of most African presidents, they salivate and they want more. They need weapons so that they can stay in power. So already when we look at what is happening in Togo, Togo may be a former French colony, but they are slowly moving away from the French orbit. They are already moving towards Russia. We see over 300 Russian members of Africa, which took over from the Wagner Group. They are now in Togo. Now, foreign Gnassingbé is consolidating his power in Togo. The opposition doesn't have the means to fight him. But what we see, he too is making friends with the Alliance of Sahel States. He has not declared yet that he's a member, but already the way he has been collaborating with them, we know that eventually they will throw the towel and stay with the Alliance of the Sahel States. When you look at what is happening in Togo, so we're just letting you know in advance, because this is geopolitics. We're explaining this to you because when it happens, don't be surprised. Know that we told you so. Togo is going to become part of that alliance. Already, Togo is collaborating a lot even with Burkina Faso. You remember Paul-Henri Damiba, right? When he was overthrown, he fled to Togo. But right now, foreign Gnassingbé is playing the role of a statesman. He's trying to make peace, to negotiate between the junta and Paul-Henri Damiba. So what do you see? We see a guy who is trying to play games. Is this going to succeed? It remains to be seen. Political sovereignty is not enough. So there are three pillars. When we tell you political sovereignty, yes, you want to be sovereign. You want to be master of your own destiny. That's good. But how can you be a master of your own destiny if you're still depending on foreign powers like France, Russia, United States? You can only be a master of your own destiny if you are independent, which is why you saw countries like the United States fought for their independence. They fought very hard to become independent. Unfortunately, in Africa, when our grandfathers fought, they were given flag independence. They did not get a real independence. So now we are fighting a war now to become free. We are fighting a new revolution. This revolution is going on. Is it going to succeed? That's something a lot of people are asking me. the revolution that is taking place now in the Sahel, is it going to be tenable? Well, it can be tenable if the guys running those countries listen to the advice we are presenting on this show. If they don't only limit themselves to political sovereignty, if they can focus on the other two pillars, which are social sovereignty and economic sovereignty, then the Sahel revolution will prosper. Because if they don't follow what we're saying, this Sahel revolution will sputter and die like a raisin in the sun. Do we want the revolution to die and dry like a raisin in the sun? No. We want the revolution, the new revolution started by Assimi Goïta, Ibrahim Traoré, General Abdurrahman Tiani. We want this revolution to succeed. If this revolution has to succeed, then they have to understand the playbook of production sovereignty. Production sovereignty simply means we have to try to become independent in the full sense of the word. We have to build our own economies. And economics is very important, because if you cannot feed yourself, then you are not a guy who deserves independence. We have to look at the way other countries became independent. And they became independent by building their economies. And I'm writing a book on production sovereignty. I'm using the cases of the United States, Britain, South Korea, China. Then I'm also using Africa as an example in this case study. So I want to show you the way we can do things so that we can become genuinely independent. I don't want us to ignore economic sovereignty. In economic sovereignty, what can we do? We can actually have our own currency, because you cannot become an economic power if you don't have your own currency. It is a first step. Instead of allowing these people to take our resources, all these multinational corporations to come to our countries and take our resource, raw materials for free, then send us imported goods, we have to start processing a lot of our stuff in Africa. Africans have a lot of brains. The problem is we lack good leadership. We lack good governance, which is why on this show we keep harping on the problems of Africa. We need to know that before our nations can prosper, we need to go through the same revolutions the United States went through. We have to go through the same revolutions Britain went through. We have to go through the same revolution South Korea went through. We have to go through the same revolution China went through. Today people look at the Chinese miracle. Yes, it did not happen by chance. Deng Xiaoping is the architect of this Chinese miracle. Even though his country is a Chinese country, he decided that he had to turn things around. He created an environment. First, he created an agrarian revolution so that the Chinese had to produce enough food to feed themselves. Next, he created the Industrial Revolution. And China is still going through the Industrial Revolution as we speak. China manufactures almost everything you see all over the world today. China is making it. I hear a lot of Africans going to China to buy products, but let's think. China is doing what we should have been doing also. So let's copy what China is doing. Let's become an industrial power. So that's the second stage. Then the final stage is the information revolution. After you've become an industrial revolutionary, then now you have to become an information revolutionary, where you become a country that has knowledge. Then you innovate and use your knowledge to produce products and services. That's where America is today. America has become an information economy. Some people would even say post-information economy. But information has become a commodity, just like you have a car. Information has become a commodity just like a car. So this is what we need to see in Africa. If we can do this, then we can have the change that we seek. So production sovereignty is the term I continue harping on this show. And for the rest of our shows, we're going to be using this term. If you are hearing it for the first time, production sovereignty, The only way we can become sovereign is by mastering the art of production, the philosophy of production, the science of production. So production is an art, it's a philosophy, it's a science. We need to master all these aspects if we want to be relevant and free and independent as a people. So long as we don't master production sovereignty, we'll continue being slaves to the Western powers. And this is what we have to tell you on this show. So the term we're going to use now, production sovereignty, we're going to be using this term every week on this show because this is the solution to Africa's problems. Production sovereignty. We need to be able to produce our own goods. We don't have to be importing stuff from outside. We have to create our own institutions. We have to change the educational system so that it reflects the needs of our own societies. We don't have to borrow the educational methods of Europe. They have not helped us, and they will not help us. So this is why we're telling you that we need change in Africa. So if you like the video that we're sharing with you, we're encouraging you to watch the show. We're encouraging you to subscribe and share the show with your friends and family. Make it possible so that we can bring you a video like this every week. Thank you very much, my brothers and sisters.
Selling a service or a product? Need buyers? Use the African Nation TV as a channel to reach many viewers. Act now and call Prince Ojong at 240-350-1131. That's 240-350-1131. Act today.